Hello, welcome to the Hoop Collective. Joining me today from elsewhere in this hotel is Tim Bontemps.
Hello, guys.
I'm on the 8th floor, Tim. What floor are you on?
I'm on the 9th floor.
Oh, okay. Well, stay up there. Joining us from a hotel in San Francisco is Tim MacMahon.
Howdy, partners. I'm also on the 9th floor.
Oh, good for you. Enjoy your party. So MacMahon, you just got done covering a Dallas Phoenix series where we had one of the more really surprising exits for a top seed, top number one overall seed. I mean, we've seen plenty of number one overall seeds lose over the years, but never in the way that this team went down. I will tell you that I don't know if I thought the Suns were the favorite to win it, but I was a big believer in them as a team that if they got beat, it would take a pretty monumental effort to beat them. I did not foresee them having a second round meltdown. And it really left, as situations like this do, it left them in a where do we go from here moment, and not something they were expecting to have happen. So you were there for it. Well, let me ask you this: where do the Suns go from here, and what did you think watching that all unfold in that 7-game series?
Where they go from here is a great question and will be fascinating to follow. When I think about a number one seed going down in flames like that, not just number one seed, a team that had far and away the best record in the regular season, I always flash back to the 67-win Mavericks, getting just spanked by the We Believe Warriors. The famous Dirk chunk in the trash can, hold the Oracle Arena wall. That series, by the way, as Raymond Ritter, the Warriors PR whiz, pointed out, Game 6 of that series, the last time the Mavs and Warriors played in a playoff game, 25-point game. Game 1 in this one, 25-point game. But my point is, I go back to that, and it took the Mavericks several years and a lot of change to kind of recover from that situation. And that was when Dirk was in his prime. So Dirk still had, he still had time in his prime for them to kind of shuffle things around him and get back to a situation where they could put together a championship caliber team. Because I do think that kind of, it shakes a franchise. Chris Paul, who knows, maybe Chris Paul plays till he's 45, but Chris Paul, for the last 5 games of that series, looked every bit of 37 years old. I think the Mavericks did a great job of physically wearing him down on both ends of the floor. And I just don't think they've got time to really kind of reshuffle things around CP3. And really the kind of the last impression other than just CP3's struggles were Monty Williams and DeAndre Ayton getting into it on the bench late in Game 7, Ayton getting pulled, Ayton only playing 17 minutes. And then Monty Williams, who I think is as pleasant an NBA head coach as you could find. They asked him about that, and he kind of tersely grumbled. It's internal. The next day, during exit interviews, the Phoenix media asked him about Ayton and obviously his contract situation this summer, entering restricted free agency. And Monty, in so many words, says, I don't want to talk about that. We'll see. So
I would say he would term it, I don't know what's going to happen, which may seem like just a way to get off the question, but it's not normally what you hear. You always hear about a free agent. Oh, we hope to have him back. We hope that it works out.
Man, I've loved coaching him. I know last night was tough, but he's been great there was none of that.
Yeah.
So
from what I understand, the exchange that DeAndre Ayton and Monty had on the bench revolved around Ayton's interest level in his focus level and whether he wanted to keep playing in the game. And whatever Ayton said didn't make Monty happy and made Monty think that he didn't want to play in the game. But whether or not that reaction to benching him was a result of that, or whether it was a buildup of other things, only Monty and Ayton know. I don't know. The reason it's a pinch point is because, as you said, MacMahon, they found out that they probably need to improve they weren't good enough despite being 64-win team, and B, that they maybe rely too much on Chris Paul. And so that's a big reality, because you start to say to yourself, well, how do you get better with a team that is already so established, and that doesn't have a simple path to getting better? And that, to me, is the real question. If you're going to say, okay, we need to diminish the role of Chris because at age 37 and 38 by next postseason, we can't rely on him to be everything to us down the stretch of playoff games, where if he has a bad game, we can't survive it. Or he has a bad week, we can't survive it. That's a fair analysis from this. But how do you get, how do you do that with the hand that they're holding? Bontemps, I think that's the real question that is staring the Suns in the face.
Well, listen, at every turn we talked about the Suns this year, I brought up two things, right? They had two guys who could dribble, Chris Paul and Devin Booker. They had no way to play small, right? In today's NBA, they went into a conference semifinals with Cam Payne as their third guard and Bismack Biyombo and JaVale McGee as the backup centers. They were playing Bismack Biyombo in Game 7 of the conference finals in the conference semifinals in the first quarter, right? Now, look, Bismack Biyombo, he turned Bismack Biyombo back into an NBA player, and like he's a useful guy to have as a depth big over the course of 82 games. This team was not deep enough. They were never deep enough. And when you go back to last year, they had a pretty fortunate run through the playoffs, right? Everybody was hurt on the teams they played. Like, not any diminishment of them making the finals, but they did have a good run health-wise. This year, they had an insane record in clutch games that boosted their regular season win total. They basically didn't play in any clutch games.
They had an insane record because they were good at playing.
Well, they were, yes, but I'm just saying
it didn't matter in the second round when there wasn't a clutch.
There were no
second.
close games, and
Fair.
they were a team that had to have everything working perfectly to win.
Agree.
And it all had to be maximized to the nth degree, right?
I agree.
And they didn't, like, to your point, they didn't have that reserve of guys to go to. So now we have Robert Sarver, a guy who has never, like, set aside the other stuff going on with Robert Sarver, which is pretty significant. He's also been a guy who's always been seen as cheap and not willing to pay. Are they going to be willing to pay?
He has, well, let me just real quick, not that I'm saying he should be believed. He had an interview that came out in the Basketball News within the last week where he indicated he was ready to go into the luxury tax for this roster.
Well, let's see.
And James Jones at the exit interviews, although he didn't say much, he did indicate that he felt that they would be able to go into the luxury tax. Now, saying those words and doing it are two different things, but I think that should be on the record.
Let's see. Let's see what happens with that. Let's see what happens with Andre Ayton. Like, do I necessarily think he should get a max? We talked about this at the beginning of the season. I didn't think he should get a max at the beginning of the season. However, he is a really good player. And if they trade him for some kind of future assets, that's going to be a problem. They don't have a lot of other flexibility to go out and add to this roster. You know, what are they going to do with Cam Johnson? He's up for an extension. They're going to get him extended. They have real structural things to fix. And like you said, MacMahon, I think the Dallas analogy is a really good one, because you look at this team, this is a really hard loss to come back from. Yeah. It reminds me a lot of another team you're around a lot, the Utah Jazz, and their loss to the Clippers last year.
Yeah.
And that team, they had moments this year where they looked good, right? But when it got down to it, that team could not recover from the way last year ended. And that was another team that thought it was their year. Everything was rolling right. They had the number 1 seed. They went in the playoffs. Things were looking great. And then it all fell apart suddenly, and they're still trying to pick up pieces from
suddenly and spectacularly.
Yeah,
and just never got it right. And this one, like, Chris Paul obviously is one of the great point guards of all time, but man, it's his 5th time being up 2-0 in a series and losing that series. There's been a lot of circumstances there, but it's still his 5th time. He's the only guy that you can ever say that with. And one of the primary reasons they lost this series is because that's about as bad a 5-game stretch as I've ever seen Chris Paul play.
Yep.
And, you know, our buddy Mark Spears reported that he was dealing with some type of quad injury. Well, Chris Paul's always dealing with something. And guess what? At 37, 38, 39, that ain't going to change. What he was dealing with is he's now a guy that the team can put a bullseye on. And it's like, oh, you think you're going to bring Luka in every screen? Okay, we're doing the same to you. And guess what? Luka's going to back you down and abuse you. And by the way, Jalen Brunson, who you've known since he was in diapers, he's going to go right at you too and light you up. And then, pick him up 94 feet, and he wore down as that series went. And then listen, game 7, we can talk strategy. We can talk, fatigue. That was a complete failure to compete. That is absolutely shocking from a Chris Paul team.
Right. So I believe that Mikal Bridges can handle more of a role. I think they could expand his role. I think he's more than just a 3-and-D player. I think there's more there, but I don't know how much more. They have to pay DeAndre Ayton. He is going to make the All-NBA team. He will be eligible for a Supermax. You're going to have to offer it to him.
Wait a minute.
I'm sorry. I misspoke. I'm sorry. Devin Booker will make the All-NBA.
Okay.
Be eligible for a Supermax. Devin, DeAndre.
I was like, I don't know what your
sorry.
ballot looks like.
Devin Booker will make the All-NBA team and get Supermax. You're going to have to pay him. And I'll just point something out. One of Cam Johnson's agents is Devin Booker's father. So when they go to negotiate with Devin Booker's contract extension, they're going to also negotiate Cam Johnson's extension. So good luck handling that, Phoenix Suns.
And
so they've got a lot to spend just to keep the core pieces in place, much less add to it.
And hey, as much as we're kind of piling on Chris Paul, not quite as rudely as Pat Bev, but as Devin Booker deserves a lot of this smoke too. Devin Booker, and I love his swagger. I love his game. He talks a lot of trash, and he talked a lot of trash to Luka. He talked trash about Luka to fans, the whole Luka special thing. Luka did the whole Michael Jordan meme, and I took that personal. And let me tell you, Luka loved rubbing it in Booker in particular's face.
Well, look, a lot of people
and Booker came up small those last 2 games.
100%.
Credit the Mavericks defense. Credit Dorian Finney-Smith. Credit, the coaching staff, Jason Kidd, Sean Sweeney, the scheme. Yep. Obviously he was a priority, but Booker came up small those last 2 games. Or
I voted
Reggie Bullock was actually on him the last 2 games.
I voted Devin Booker 4th on my MVP ballot, ahead of Luka Doncic and ahead of Jason Tatum, who wasn't on it, in part because of the way the Suns played during the season. And to your point, that was far from an MVP performance in the 2 biggest games of the season. And I think that's something that, if for them to get where they want to go, Devin Booker is kind of a co-star with Chris Paul, even at this point in his career, right? Devin Booker's got to truly take another step forward too, on top of all this other stuff, for them to really get where they want to go. And I'm not sure he can do that.
It's Devin Booker's franchise. And again, I feel like their playoff failure is being put more at Chris Paul's feet, when, if anything, it's at least, there's got to be at least equal responsibility in Booker. And I'm not saying Booker's shirking the responsibility, but I just feel like the discussion is more CP3. And I understand it, because that window is shrinking where Booker's still got a long career ahead of him. But this was also, this was about Devin Booker, who was, at least on, what we finished, 4th or 5th, whatever it was, an MVP candidate, coming up very, very small.
And to your point about that 2007 comparison, Dirk had to kind of go into the wilderness and figure himself out and come back from that. So,
and that was the year
Devin Booker can do it too.
Won MVP, and there was the humiliating, oh man, we got to do this press conference after we've been eliminated as a number 1 seed.
Yep.
And hey, and Dirk, that kind of, I would say, reinforced the stereotype, even though I think the stereotype is inaccurate, of him being a soft Euro. He had to deal with that, and it didn't go away until he won a championship. And I know the Suns went to the finals last year, but guess what? So did the Mavericks the year before that.
Well, just if they want to move on from Ayton and improve, just know that if you're going to trade DeAndre Ayton, you got to find a trade partner, and Ayton gets to play a role in that because he's the free agent. And then you're going to need a center. And Bontemps can point that, any center is going to look better in that system. That may be true, but DeAndre Ayton has a lot of talents, especially defensively, that will be very hard to replace. So I would actually advise them to re-sign DeAndre Ayton, find a number that you can agree on and re-sign him, and then try to find another way, as opposed to that, even if you have to trade him in a year or 2. But the Suns are a team that I thought we were going to be talking about an awful lot
Mhm.
over the next month that was going to be revolved around their play, not around what they have to do in this offseason, which is already here. Okay, thanks for watching the Hoop Collective Short. You can hear us on our full podcast that come out every Tuesday and Friday. Thank you to MacMahon. Thank you to Bontemps. Thank you to our producers. We will talk to you soon.